Hey folks, this is Mobile AppSec 101. I'm Tony Ramirez, and this is a course on mobile application security testing. This course is made for people who are getting into mobile application security testing, maybe have some experience in web, or trying to build policy for their organization on how to handle their mobile apps. This is also great if you're a student who's not really been introduced to the application security world and kind of want to understand what's going on in mobile. This is a great introductory course, and I hope you watch it and I hope you enjoy. Before we dive in, I think it's important to kind of cover some course materials that'll be useful for you as you try to start your journey in mobile. And what I found really helpful are guidelines that OWASP is creating, along with some understanding of what the attack surface is in mobile, and some other things that are pretty helpful. These course materials aren't necessary to complete the course, but I will say that as you finish the videos up and you start learning more about mobile and try testing apps yourself or building policy yourself, these are really good documents to kind of understand where to go next. And we'll talk about them in later videos, but I thought it would be useful to introduce them earlier on. Today's video is just an introduction to mobile application security testing and mobile in general. We're going to cover some brief topics about issues in mobile and the differences between web application security and mobile application security. To start off, I think it's really important to understand why mobile is so important today, and it's actually a really simple reason. Mobile's become incredibly prevalent. Everyone has a mobile device today, everyone's using them, and a lot of people are using them not only for their own personal use, but for business uses and various other uses. Really, 10 years ago, if you had said, mobile was going to be more prevalent than desktops, you might have been laughed at. I would have laughed at you. In fact, I posted this quote from Steve Jobs that I thought was kind of funny when I heard it. He thought that, PCs were going to be a thing of the past, that desktop computers were going to get replaced. And the truth is that looking 10 years back, this is really true. There are so many mobile devices, and the amount of mobile devices compared to standard desktops is really changing. Like, we're seeing more and more people using mobile for not only just their own use, but business use as well. And that's not going to go away. So for any change, there's always kind of another change that happens after that. So yeah, mobile is really prevalent, and as a result, we're seeing a lot more mobile application security issues. One thing we're seeing is a lot more breaches, a lot more app issues, a lot more over the last few years. I can tell you from personal experience, in the last 2.5 years, the amount of mobile in the news has really grown a lot. And that's not going to go away. As we see more mobile devices, more mobile apps, we're going to keep seeing more mobile issues. And we're going to see more mobile in the news. And really, you don't want that to happen to you. Another thing we're noticing is that a lot of the apps in the app stores are just not secure. We're finding that 85% of apps on the App Store have at least one security vulnerability, and almost half have a privacy issue. That means that there's at least probably one app on your device that has a privacy issue today. There's at least one app on your device that has some vulnerability on there. And that's really frightening, because that tells you that the vetting that's being done by the App Store may not be enough to protect you as a user. But not only you as a user, you as somebody who runs an enterprise and puts apps on workforce devices, and that is a major issue. What kind of adds on to that whole issue is it isn't just low risk vulnerability issues. A lot of the issues we're finding are in fact high risk issues, but not only high risk issues that should be found pretty early on in testing processes or code review processes. And a perfect example of one that should be caught in a code review is use of system logs. Applications are written and they're tested, and system logs is a great way to debug apps. But leaving debug code in a production app is a big no-no, because it's unnecessary, it's extraneous functionality, and it is data security leakage. So when we're seeing applications do that, that's telling us that nobody's reviewing these apps. The other thing is we're seeing a lot of use of HTTP, and we all know HTTP is bad and it should go away, and it's 2020, and all our 2020 goal is to never use HTTP ever again anymore. But the truth is that 1 in 5 Android apps is using HTTP today, and 1 in 7 iOS apps is using HTTP. And these are things you would expect to get caught during a security test or some security analysis, and they're not getting caught. These are apps that are ending up on the App Store. So enterprises are not spending enough time testing these apps and reviewing their code. So we can determine that, there's a big issue here. There's another challenge that I think people forget to talk about, and it's that there's a skill gap. For a lot of people, getting into web and moving to mobile is a big change. It isn't something that happens overnight, and it isn't something that I can say is 100% transferable. So there are some major differences, and we're going to cover those right now. So if you're not familiar with the OWASP Top 10, the OWASP Top 10 is a guideline. It's basically a list of, hey, these are 10 vulnerabilities that we're seeing more common than any others. There's a mobile list and there's a web list. This has been going on for quite a while now, and if you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend checking it out because it's a great document to share with developers and security people to understand what the big issues are. So when we look at the mobile top 10 and we look at the web top 10, we see that they're pretty different. And not only that, but the issues don't have a lot of overlap. There's a lot of differences here, and it means that, there are some major divides between mobile and web. That mobile and web are really different. When we actually invest some time in determining what is different between mobile and web, we can really break it down to a few things. And I think the first one that really comes to mind is where your code exists. In mobile, you're installing an app on a device that has your source code, and it's binary, and it's running on that device. In web, it's running on a server. It's going somewhere else. That server is usually owned by the organization that's developing that code. In mobile, you're putting that code out in the wild, and it's there. And if any IP exists there, or any type of, things that you don't have control over exists on that client side, you really don't have control. That's the challenge. On top of that, web has the advantage of browser security, and browser security is kind of a totally different animal than mobile, and I'm not going to comment too much on it. But when you go to a website that isn't using HTTPS correctly, what do you see? You see a big red screen that says, "Don't go here. This is an insecure connection." In mobile, as it turns out, it's really up to the developer if they want to tell you something's going on, like, are you being man in the middle? Is something happening that's incorrect? We're going to talk a little bit about that topic later on in these videos, but that is a major part of the web versus mobile thing, that a lot of stuff on the mobile side has to be done by the developer, and it has to be verified by the developer before that app goes out into production. The other thing is there's a huge layer of data security that goes into mobile because you're storing data on that device, you're caching files, you're using memory, you're using assets and resources on that device. And in browser security, it's pretty isolated. Not only that, but web applications are all isolated from one another. In mobile, applications can speak to one another. Applications can be used to authenticate to one another. Applications can share data between one another. And that really kind of creates some chaos. That creates another level, a layer of difficulty when you're doing your testing, when you're considering how your app should interact with one another. And that's just a whole layer to the attack surface that would never exist in web. So that kind of leads us to this point of what do we have to learn to become mobile application security experts? And to become a mobile security expert, we really need to consider what the tools we want to use are, what guidelines we should be following, baselines and methodologies. And, I use this picture here because really, I'm chucking all these balls at you, and, you're going to be hearing a lot of stuff, but we're going to be going over this in the next few videos. And, don't get overwhelmed because you can always hit pause, you can always hit replay, you can always rewind, and we're going to cover all these topics, and, I'm here to help you. So to summarize this video, we covered the mobile security issue and how it's in the news today, how it's growing, and how it's really common for these application security issues to exist in the App Store. But not only that, there's this divide between mobile and web, and it can be a challenge for people who are in the web world to transition into mobile, either if they're a developer or security analyst. And we're going to dig into all these things. We're going to make you into an expert.